Hello, thank you for listening to our podcast, Autism Goes to College. My name's Sam. I went to college online for my undergraduate degree in psychology, and I am currently in a master's program to become a therapist, which is partially in person but mostly online. And I also have a certificate in publishing from the Denver Publishing Institute through Denver University. I'm here with Catherine O'Brien, the host of Autism Goes to College podcast, and I'm going to hand it over to her. Okay,
Thanks,
is
Sam.
that
I'm
good?
so excited to hear from you. We should also mention that Sam posts on TikTok as Velociraptor, so go follow him there. Um, Sam, you mentioned that you went to college online. I'm assuming that means that you did not live on campus and maybe you lived at home. Can you talk a little bit about your choice and how you lived during that beginning of college?
Sure. So, for the beginning of the college, I actually went to a community college. So, I was commuting to that for 2 or 3 classes a semester. I lived in my parents' home, and I'd drive to that.
Nice. And how did you choose your institution? Where were you going to school?
I went to Colorado Mountain College, commuting to Breckenridge and Dillon.
Mm-hmm.
I chose that school because I was actually caretaking for my grandfather who was dying of Parkinson's disease at the time. So during the day and in the evenings, I was taking care of him by myself. But I still continued my education until COVID hit, and I took a break when that happened. But
Yeah. My condolences about the passing of your grandfather. Did you consider a 4-year college, or what made you steer towards the 2-year pathway?
yeah, I got to a lot of different colleges. I got into DU at the time in Boulder, and I got into Reed College in the Northwest. But I had to take care of him. It was my duty, really.
Mm-hmm.
I felt.
Yeah. Reed was actually on my short list as well,
Oh,
Sam. So I'm interested to hear that that was when you looked at. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
And from there, I went to two different colleges after that. I went to a college in person for a semester, and that I didn't like that. I was only there for a semester, and
Mhm.
I got so burned out from that. Um,
You mentioned that it was overwhelming. Can you talk more about how it went? Did you live on
sure.
campus?
Yeah, I lived in a. I had a private room, but I had a shared like suite with apartment suite with a bunch of football players, and they were partiers, and they'd like dump like water on people and like do crazy stuff and like I liked them. They were cool, and I did enjoy them, but it wasn't the best living environment for
Yeah.
me because like yeah.
Yeah, if you value like very quiet environments to unwind, I can see how a group of young athletes who are having the absolute time of their lives wouldn't really be conducive to just like peace and quiet.
Yeah, yeah, but I did meet my girlfriend when who I've been dating for like 2 years. We were
Oh.
friends for a year and then started dating, so that was a very good aspect of that time.
Oh, that's very nice. I'm glad
Yeah,
you can find some silver linings, even if the living situation was probably pretty raucous.
yeah.
So it sounds like the on campus experience took its toll. How did you cope to make it through the semester and manage afterwards?
Well, I did not make it through the semester. I took a
Oh.
medical withdrawal and I went to I actually ended up in like even though I had not been on any substances like in months. Uh,
Mhm.
they didn't know where to put me really. I guess I don't know who made the decision really in the end because I wasn't mentally. I was so burned out. I couldn't do anything. They put me in a drug rehab program, even though I didn't have an addiction. So I
Oh.
was there for a month and a half, like starting in October. So I only made it a couple months into the semester, and then ended up in a drug rehab.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
although you weren't struggling with substance use at the time,
Yeah.
did you find that rehab facility to be a supportive place to recover? Were they able to help you fight
Actually,
that?
yeah. I got forced to go to like AA meetings and stuff like that I didn't need, and I learned from that because I'm in school now to be a therapist. So I guess I learned
Mm.
like professionally, it's good perspective. Uh, and I made some friends there, and that was actually the first place I was really like fully accepting of being autistic towards myself because I
Mm.
was late diagnosed.
I
So
see.
I felt I was more accepted there than in most places, and even though it wasn't necessarily the ideal like curriculum
Mhm.
for burnout.
Yeah. No, it speaks to the difficulty of finding mental health services in a timely fashion, and I'm very glad to hear that you're using that experience to, create a career where you can change things a little bit. So I'm assuming because you graduated, it sounds like you went back to college after the medical leave. How did you decide what to do next and where to end up in school?
I just decided that the in-person studies were not good. So I immediately started online school that next semester, but I was able to get in for the winter semester after getting out of rehab in early December.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
I like was starting school like a week after I got out.
Great. And
So
you felt
I felt fine. The online program really like made it so easy for me that I could like instead of structuring my life around school, I could structure school around my life.
Mhm.
Uh, so
Yeah. What factors did you look for in that online program? How did you choose?
not much. I really um, just wanted the online program. I didn't really know what to look for. I'd never done that before. And I ended up going to Grand Canyon University, which had some pretty positive aspects. Their user interface was good on their website.
Mhm.
Uh,
Totally. That makes a lot of sense. I can see how the website for online school would be absolutely critical to how it
yeah,
works. So you mentioned that going to Grand Canyon online allowed you to structure school around your life. What
yeah.
else did you have going on at that point? Were you
Um,
working, living independently?
I was working for about a year, like at different jobs. I couldn't really. I actually gotten discriminated against at a couple jobs, so I didn't like hold those ones.
Mhm.
So I worked in restaurants. I worked in a factory. Um, I I haven't worked since like 2022, but I lived on my own.
Mhm.
I'm in my own apartment. Uh, um, what else was I doing? I'm a music producer. I guess I was doing stuff like that. Like I
Mhm.
was rapping, writing. Uh, I write uh, articles and I started doing social media on TikTok again
Mhm.
because I had a successful gaming account where I had about 80,000 followers. But then I stopped doing that and started doing the autism content
And you're still on TikTok, of course.
and
So,
YouTube. Yeah.
oh, okay. Great. I didn't know about the YouTube. So, um, you mentioned late diagnosis. How did you arrive at your diagnosis? What
Hmm.
was the moment, or what was the kind of initiating event that led you to finding out?
Well, I had been getting my degree in psychology,
Mhm.
and uh, so I had been studying like a lot of different things about like disorders in the mind, and I also had just been looking through thinking or contemplating the past, and it turns out I had gotten a test I didn't know about when I was a child for
Mhm.
autism, and I read through all the psychometrics and found that I had scored very highly probable for having autism. At the time, they said it was like, the Asperger's, since it was
Mm-hmm.
like 20 years or 15 years ago when I had gotten that test when I was 9 years old. But they dismissed all of that, even though the psychometrics indicated I was autistic, as anxiety. So I never got any accommodations, and I actually had forgotten about the test even existing because my parents hadn't brought it up until I started to get suspicious that I might be on the spectrum, and I could interpret the information because I was in school for psychology.
I see.
Yeah.
So you had an old psychological report that had it in there, and
Yeah.
nobody knew. Um, Fascinating. So you graduated, and now you're in grad school studying to be a
Yeah.
therapist, which makes natural sense to me after studying psychology and struggling with your own identity, your own diagnosis.
Yeah.
So how did you choose grad school, and how did you choose this therapy program?
Um, it's also mostly online. So the
Mm-hmm.
therapy program's an in-state program for me. Um, and we go in for a week every semester or less. So you get a little in person, but not so much where it's going to throw off your routine and be your primary obligation to show up in person. So I chose it for those reasons. And what else? Yeah, the price was good because it's an in-state school.
That's good. I'm wondering a little bit about the social aspects of online, and if that is important to you to feel connected in person, or at least digitally, to your classmates. It sounds like your program now has some opportunities for in-person connection with that 1 week a month of uh, in person.
Hmm. Yeah, so I think that'll be good. Um, but naturally, I'm pretty reclusive, so I don't really care very much, like about like socializing with my
Mhm.
like school peers. It's never been a priority for me. Other people at times like thought I would that would become a priority or that I'd like it, like, and develop that. And no, I don't really care. I mean, I have friends.
Mhm.
I hang out with poets and and artists, like primarily. And they're mostly older than me.
Mhm.
And I also I spend most of my like free time. I'm like have a very good meditation teacher, a master who like, so I've been spend a lot of time like meditating and also a lot of time reading and studying
Mhm.
other topics like philosophy and history. So I really don't mind the solitude. uh,
Yeah. So it sounds like that wasn't a compelling reason to go to in-person classes when you tried them, and it also wasn't a drawback to going back to online.
yeah, I got a lot out of the experience in a way, not socially, but for the most part. But I took a class in ancient Greek, which I liked, which I wouldn't have done any
Mhm.
otherwise. And um, I got a lot of practice, like rapping at the time, uh, which was good. Uh,
Interesting. Like the music style.
Yeah, I'm a rapper, so
Oh.
and producer. So at the time I'd go to the like student like the I was in the choir too. That's another thing. I actually got into the top choir at the college without any like I didn't know how to read music. So I would
Okay.
follow the accompaniment of the piano,
Yeah.
and I'd go into the practice hall at night and rap by myself, like stuff I had written and practice things like that.
Yeah.
So that was very good. Uh,
Yeah. The resources on campus in terms of physical space can be very helpful. That makes sense.
yeah.
So, were there careers besides therapy that you considered? Was there anything else you tried, or did you know that this was what was for you?
Well, I always had this feeling that I wanted to do therapy, at least like academically. I did consider becoming an acupuncturist. I was in a program last year right after I graduated for acupuncture for about like a month, and I decided it wasn't for me. But I made some
Oh,
really good friends there.
okay.
I went and had like drinks and lunch in Boulder with a close friend of mine I met there, and I learned a lot about Chinese philosophy at
Mhm.
the time.
So, what made you realize acupuncture was not for you after all?
The touching, it
Oh,
required a lot of like touching and like also smelling for the program I was in. I was in for like 5 element acupuncture, so they had a pretty high requirement for like being able to smell people without like being very close to them, and I didn't really have that sense of smell, and I did not like getting touched very much. And also the like in-person element of being a therapist, it's much more flexible for like telehealth, so I could do stuff online, whereas being an acupuncturist, you can't give acupuncture on the computer unless there was a robot, and I don't think anyone would want a robot giving them acupuncture
yeah.
right now, at least.
What if you flinch and the robot? Yeah, I don't know. Anything could happen, really. Very
Yeah.
dangerous situation. So yeah, no telehealth acupuncture. That makes sense. Um,
Yeah.
so, uh, you talked about finding that historical diagnostic report. Uh,
Yeah.
in hindsight, when you got your diagnosis,
Hmm.
how did that feel? Like, did it all make sense? Can you talk about what that moment was like?
um that's a good question. uh, Honestly, for a while, for a year or two, um primarily it was confusion, even though like I mean, and gaslighting from like without people realizing it, people around me, because they saw me as this one way. And when I learned that about myself, I started to realize that I had been unconsciously masking my behaviors and my intentions and my feelings for so long because I couldn't understand them. I used to like smooth over things and uh, not really understand like that certain ways I had acted in the world um, were just because I was trying to not appear autistic to people, even though I didn't know that was the case. And it impacted my communication and my emotional health. And a lot of people didn't understand, and I also didn't understand what that would mean for like how do I reconcile my true nature to like the person who I thought I was.
Hmm. Yeah. And also, like, how do I allow myself to be known to the people that already thought they knew me? How does that
Yeah,
impact my relationships?
it did. It did, and it's better, a lot better now. But um, I feel like if I wouldn't have been able to accept the facts the way they were, I would have been in a different position now, where I would be still repressed and trying to like appear to be a way that is not good for my interior like feelings and life. Uh,
Yeah. No, it's I can speak from personal experience. It's terrible to live at constant war with your psyche, trying to be someone you're not. Um, so it sounds like because you didn't know about that early round of psych testing and it wasn't identified until you were an adult, that you maybe didn't have any accommodations.
None, no.
What was that like? Do you have accommodations now that you have your diagnosis?
Yeah, actually, the first time I got accommodations was when I was taking anatomy and biology as a prerequisite for my acupuncture program. So I couldn't like spell stuff very well and easily, and they required that for the course in anatomy. It's a lot to remember every bone in the
Mhm,
body and how to spell it. So I was able to get an accommodation actually at that time with the old test,
mhm.
the one they didn't even put like autism on it. They gave me an accommodation for with that test until I got the real test that I use that I have now, the second
Yeah.
evaluation this year. So I wasn't formally diagnosed until earlier this year. And yeah, I had no accommodations through all of K through 12 and college, pretty much.
So, do you have any advice about going it without accommodations or about seeking accommodations when you haven't had them before?
I'll answer both of those
Great.
questions. When you don't have accommodations, you really need to behind the scenes, you need to be evaluating what environments and what kinds of cultures do I want to immerse myself in, and where they won't recognize your where you're at, because unfortunately we live in a bureaucratic kind of state where in order for our needs to be legitimate to the our authorities when we're in these programs, it needs to be recognized by the psychiatric machine. So if you're not going to work with it, you have to find a way to behind the scenes find your path that's not going to destroy your mental health, and advocate for yourself to the best of your ability, or have someone there with you to help. And when in the second question was how getting accommodations and the
Yeah, for the
process.
first time.
Oh, what it feels like, or what it
Yeah, I mean, any advice or what it was like for you
right.
if you don't have advice?
Well, advice for getting accommodations is to not feel or to find a way to be over time to accept what you need help with, even though and not totally rely on your strengths, even though they're there. Just to be transparent about what you might need, because it will make your life better, most likely, if you can accept what you might need help with, instead of trying to repress those needs. The accommodations, even though they can, if you've been undiagnosed your whole life, you might feel a lot of your pride dissolve in some ways, asking for help, to just go with that, because it can be very helpful to get accommodations. And the feeling is good when you get them, for the most part, because then you can be honest, in a way where it's accepted by the authorities around you, and not just in sentiment, where they don't do anything to actually help you.
Yeah, I was also late diagnosed, so I just was an anxious student.
Yeah.
But yeah, so thank you so much. I hope that online grad school continues to go well. Has
Thank
the
you.
semester already started for you?
Yeah, I've been in it for almost a month now. And I went straight from my publishing certificate program into this. That one burned me out. It was totally in person.
Oh,
I
that's a lot.
It was a month straight of going in person, driving to Denver. I that was too much.
Yeah, I see. The combination of commuting and the sensory and social demands of being with people all day is so intense.
Yeah, luckily I did have accommodations, where the people were, to a large extent, were able to lower the volume in the room sometimes, because there was a loud mic they'd use, and they wouldn't adjust it in the way that was very good sometimes for me.
Yeah.
I could wear my headphones.
Mhm.
But going into this master's program was pretty intense, because I just was burned out from that publishing program to go into another school program. But it ended up being okay.
Yeah, I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, best of luck with the rest of the semester. I hope it
Thank you.
continues to go so very well. Um, thank you so much for coming on Autism Goes to College.
Yeah, thank you.